Welcome out to a very special episode of It's All Been Shrek Before. Your regular hosts are here.
This is Steven.
And Keith.
Olivia James. We're here to talk about the Star Trek book, The Ashes of Eden, a novel by William Shatner. Although, if you look in the inside, it sure seems like Judith and Garfield Reeve Stevens have a with credit on the interior title page. I believe the rest of the series, their names will be on the cover along with Shatner's. So,
I wondered about that.
first impressions of The Ashes of Eden.
Well, I mean, my first impression is probably going to be slightly different in the sense that a lot of it had to do with the production quality. Need to get my sound settings here.
Because you did the abridged audiobook read by Shatner, right?
Correct.
Yeah. It's about 2.5 hours long, so they must have cut a lot.
I'm wondering. I didn't feel like anything was really missing.
Yeah.
And I think the pacing was, did what it needed to do in essence. But what I was going to say really is that they actually put sort of, background music through a lot of it, and sometimes sound effects. Sometimes that took me out of it a little bit. Sometimes it made it harder to hear than I think it needed to, which, that's not, I mean, I know there are different styles. I mean, when I did them, I didn't really have any background music. I mean, every now and then, like maybe some little interstitial piece if the author or whoever wanted it that way.
Did he put out any voices or anything? Or
he did actually.
Okay.
It was pretty straight for the most part, but when he got to like a Spock or a Chekhov and Scotty, he would actually do the voices. Was sometimes it was subtle, sometimes it was just full on.
Yeah.
And I know from having done it, I could kind of see, like, when you're first starting off the book, you're still kind of warming up. I could see as the progression went, but by the time, by the back half, he was fully committed to doing at least the voices of the main cast in that way.
Let me ask you this while we're on this. When you recorded them, is it always in order? I mean, I know the book ends up in order, but do you record it in order? Or sometimes like, I feel ready for this, I don't feel ready for that.
I should think of doing things like that actually, but I mean, more often than not, it ends up being that you just have to do it sequentially anyway, and then but you will then spend time going back to edit and try to perfect the chapter, either before moving on or having to go back and perfect it again, which sometimes, unfortunately, there's a jump in quality between the first the first chapter and the last chapter, so it almost like you have to go back. You've already, okay, if I polished that voice, I polished the cadence, I realize what's wrong here, then having to go back and but it's been forever since I've done that, and who knows. But he was pretty good, I'll say. I mean, overall, I thought he was good. None of the stereotypical Shatner voice you would expect. That thing. We all know that's not really going to be the case most of the time anyway. But none of that took me out of it. So,
and I guess on that note, I'll jump in with my first impression as well. There weren't a lot of Kirk-like, or I should say TOS season 3, especially, kind of pontificating and stuff. The things that made Wrath of Khan and that stuff. And this book was very in the Wrath of Khan mode of, we talked about, I'm very close to Kirk's age in the material we are watching, Wrath of Khan and through this vaguely. So I found this insanely relatable, for better or worse. But also at the same time, like, this is my guy, and I'll say there was a little bit of, the whole storyline of him and, geez, I'm already going off on her name. This is
Talani.
Talani, yeah. Who I thought we can get more. We will get more into this, but. Initially, I almost went through the same progression as Kirk's character. Because at first, I'm like, all right, and you guys know how I'm like, Star Trek should have sex. You got it. It's in its DNA. It's in all of our DNA, but it's in Star Trek as well. And but I thought I appreciated all the like, I don't know if this is a good idea. She's really young. Even Kirk himself is like, I don't know if this is gonna work. But he was also like all along the line, like, hey, but if I still got it, I got it, right? Why not? What do I got to do? Da da da. And then it kind of comes realization like, oh, you know what? This was about something else. And I thought again, it was very adult, and I mean that in not the dirty sense. Although we I thought they did just enough to get me and anybody else like, all right, this is kind of hot, including the cover picture. For you Patreon folks, if you can see that.
Mm-hmm.
Also, obviously, everyone knows, Joanne, if you know Joanne Linville, you know how much I love Romulans. So it was nice to see she was Romulan Klingon, but still, regardless. So the whole Kirk arc of it was great, but also the way the other people were involved. I thought it felt like a TOS movie. I thought it wasn't perfect, obviously. What is, besides Wrath of Khan, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I enjoyed it a lot because I definitely hit that point in the middle where I'm like, where's this thing going? And then they did kind of turn, and we got going. As far as I'm going way beyond first impressions, I'll wrap it up with this. But as far as the universe building or galaxy building, a little bit too neat for me. The whole that admiral was part of Obsession.
Mm.
Also interesting, reaching back to an episode that, like Space Seed, definitely not as good as Space Seed, but a second season episode that not a lot of people love, but everyone remembers. So I think in some ways it was a good choice. But overall, yeah, it's a fastball right down the middle for me. So it checked a lot of my boxes. So I enjoyed it a lot.
So I read two versions of this. I read the novel.
What?
Yep. I read the novel, and then there's a graphic novel version. So I read both.
Oh,
Uh,
wow.
the graphic novel was highly truncated. I assume similar to Keith's audiobook. I mean, this is 300 pages. So just to read out loud, I think you'd have to cut at least 75% of it to get it to 2.5 hours. I did not listen. I'd like to, but I have to think that like 75% of the text is gone in what Keith heard. And I would say it's probably similar for the graphic novel. I think they did it in like, I want to say 80, 90 pages. It was, they cut more of the first and second half. One thing they cut, I liked them both. For the record, I did think the novel was better. I made just a few notes about the graphic novel that we'll get to as we go through, but not very many. It was a decent, faithful adaptation to this. They didn't add anything. It was just cutting things out and simplifying. So I give them credit for that. But yeah, I like this book a lot. I think Shatner has the tone and voice of the characters down. Kirk most of all, but I think he's really good at writing Spock,
Mm.
and McCoy and that trio. Sometimes you can feel it slip out of the characters a little bit, but I think for the most part it stays in it. He does do some things that make Kirk a little too perfect a hero, but then he does give him some flaws too. I mean, I was very uncomfortable with the age gap. I thought it was extreme, and I felt like it was Shatner writing what
Uh,
Shatner wanted to experience, perhaps in some ways. Um,
well, no,
Again, relatable, but also at the same being relatable, relating to it, but also being like, I'm not so sure about this myself.
wait, so
on the
are you talking
On a
about,
lot of levels.
wait a second though. Are you talking about like your first impression or the way you felt by the end?
first
Um,
impression, but I don't think it
Okay.
changed that much by the end,
All right. So
especially once he became more fatherly towards her.
I forgot to mention that I was, since actually this, or so, um, I was listening to this with Shelly, who at the time of this recording is my girlfriend. Uh, then that could change by the time she hears this and that part where I'm saying at the time of this recording. But no, I mean it was a lot of it was her idea to kind of push, hey, audiobook, let's do it.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so listening to her comments as well about that storyline as we're going along, that discomfort and just that kind of um and I thought like almost word for word exactly what Olivia was just saying about This feels a little too uh, like a, like a Shatner fantasy or something like that.
It
I don't know if we want to jump ahead to what how this I don't know.
Well,
I thought there were some mitigating factors eventually, but it's that kind of I don't know.
think he also let Kirk off the hook too easy because I thought it was interesting. He wrote like all of his old crew disagreeing with him and standing up to him, like Spock and Scotty and stuff, and then he's like, maybe they were right, and then just moves on. And it's just like, okay, yeah, I appreciate you didn't write Kirk as perfect and that he didn't end up being right always completely. But then like he also made sure then after that to be like Spock's like, but so I was right, it didn't last. And Kirk's like, well, that's not why we can't do it. It's fine if we did it, even though it didn't last. I'm like, okay.
it
It
I don't
just
I
fits
don't
the
think
felt
I
a
element
don't I don't think
of
that came
middle
up in the
age,
audiobook.
middle midlife crisis or whatever too, and I guess, but
yeah. Yeah, we'll see if as we talk through all the details Keith was missing, if his opinion changes. But let's start at the beginning. I'm curious of the prologues in the audiobook. The prologue and epilogue were not in the graphic novel, and that's the one thing they
Hmm.
changed. There was actually an implication at the end of the graphic novel, so it kind of had like almost an alternate ending, even if it wasn't explicit. We'll talk about that in a minute. The only change they made. But that prologue was Kirk or Spock standing at Kirk's grave on Viridian 3.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, that
yeah,
was there.
that was there. Okay, good. So just like I liked that as a prologue, that
mhm.
like Kirk's death hanging over the whole book. That we know this is how it ends. It bothers me a bit that the themes don't of the story don't tie into that more. I feel like he was kind of close to that. That like wrap it all together in a nice bow about mortality and stuff, but he didn't. He just kind of like, oh, here's the thing, and then let's move on from it. Um, but I did like the Riker cameo. I do think as Shatner's books go on, if you keep reading them, I think there's like 12. He ends up working in a lot of characters from like Deep Space Nine and Voyager 2 and Next Gen because I think he wants to play with all of those characters as well.
I thought the drops that were in there were interesting, and also I thought they were just sparingly enough that, like, we go through Kirk's sexual history to a point, and it's like, oh, that's that episode, that's that episode. But Edith Keeler's never mentioned. Carol Marcus is around enough.
He did her dirty in
I
this
think
book.
so too. I agree. Not enough time for her because I couldn't
Also,
remember.
just
I
not
didn't know
didn't
where
treat
the
her
book
well.
was going, and I was like, "Oh,
Yeah.
we're gonna get more Carol Marcus," and we did not. We get more David Marcus than we get Carol Marcus. I mean, he's not. He's a big part of the book, but even though he's not.
Well, it bums me out because the Generations novelization, as we had talked about when we reviewed the movie, had like a really good part of him and Carol being together and retiring together. And so this just ignores that, which that's not canon, neither is this. So I guess you can ignore it. But it's also like that
Yeah,
book just came out and it'll be a lot of the same people reading it. I wish you would have taken that into account.
it gave a very. It's a very realistic thing of like, well, we just know we're not going to be together, but as a fan base, or I'm not a fan base, but as a fan and part of that fan base, it felt like, I guess maybe just being a Carol Marcus fan, I was like, give me more. Kind of like the Kelvin universe. Give me more Carol Marcus, which again goes back to what we're talking about in very young ladies. No, I don't know how much Alice Eve's much younger than me. I know that period, um, but they, of course, they did her wrong too. But anyway, but yeah, I agree. They not enough Carol Marcus.
And
Very.
so even before we get to that, the first main chapter has Kirk in the holodeck simulation of his old
Mhm,
mission, which I
mhm.
think was kind of fun. I liked that they worked that in. I did think that themes were followed up upon about like how he sees himself, and it helped spark his crisis of himself. I liked that a lot. Fair got the cloud creature. They also talked about laser versus phaser, which I thought was
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
As we move into chapter 2, they start dropping more references to the preservers, of course, the Paradise Syndrome and TNG's The Chase.
Mhm.
And they talk about a very, very old station. And I was like, okay, I kind of like tying it into the preservers, and I kind of like tying the preservers into that TNG episode, The Chase, of the race that seeded everything. Like, I thought
Mhm.
that was a really good. He
Mhm.
does some things like later where in other books where he'll tie things together that aren't connected in canon but makes so much sense to connect them.
Mhm.
So if we read any more. I think the very next one has a really big tie-in between V'ger and another alien species. I'm like, yes, why isn't that canon? Then we move into introducing the B plot, which is led by Chekhov, with Uhura as his sidekick,
Yeah.
essentially. I thought it was interesting he chose Chekhov as like
Yeah.
the B lead because I feel like Chekhov's a character that didn't get a whole lot, but I also thought it was a good choice because of the parallels between Kirk and Chekhov and how much Chekhov is like Kirk in some ways.
And this might just be for the Patreon folks, probably will be, but I'm shooting a short film this weekend it's about two Russian composers. And originally we were going to do with Russian accents. So this book was actually helping me work on that because I told people, I'm like, well, I'm going to listen to Chekhov. They're like, oh, that's a great idea to get ready for that. But then me and the other actor got together and he was like, you think we can ditch these? I'm like, that'd be fine. So odds are we're not going to do the Russian accent with it. But anyway, yeah, I was surprised too. And of course, as always, you want more Uhura. But I thought I like the way he got all the other folks. I like the idea of Sulu and Chekhov not getting along. I thought sometimes it was forced a little, but I thought also Shatner did a good job of clarifying these two characters or who they are. Obviously, if you're fans of TOS, you're like, oh, these two are buddies. They sat next to each other for 2 seasons or whatever. But and through the film, the films. But I thought he did do a good job of writing, especially in Sulu's voice. Like I said, it was good to hear those other characters and Scotty for that matter. We got a little more of Scotty, a little deeper Scotty than I feel like we usually get, which was nice.
I liked creating the conflict between Chekhov and Sulu for the most part, but I did think it wasn't as well developed as I wanted it to be, especially the resolution. It
Stayed
just
at one spot.
seemed
Yeah.
convenient and yeah, there wasn't really like a justification for it in the end. Like if it had ended up playing a role in what went down, I think I would have appreciated it more, but it was almost like distraction because it didn't pay off in any real way.
And
It's,
maybe
it's funny you should say that, of course, because that was not in the audiobook.
The conflict between Sulu and Chekhov?
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah, it wasn't in the graphic novel either. They cut it from the graphic novel.
Yeah, there's barely anything with the rest of the crew. I mean, except for the meeting where they're being briefed on what was going on.
Well, and I guess
from the outside
point,
perspective,
I feel like that's another thing that's taken care of very easily, and it's in a very manly way, for lack of a better term, just kind of like head nod. Yeah, we know we went through this. We don't actually have to talk this out or anything. They talk at each other about that we have this problem with each other, but they never actually talk about it with each other. If you can follow them, to resolve it, it just gets resolved because hey, we won, we did it, we got it done. It is a little bit. I understand what you were doing, and I understand what you were doing, but yeah.
Yeah, and so we had Uhura and Chekhov on this undercover mission where they're playing spies, but then we cut away from that to go back to the Carol Marcus thing, and how the big rumination as he's staring out the window into the rain, realizing their relationship is dead. And I just wanted to scream at him and shake him, and I'm like, nah. Look, I get if you're not interested, if it just didn't work out, but I don't know. I just love Kirk and Carol together so much. And also, I feel like Kirk would have handled it a little more maturely, a little more straightforward, and not just, I don't know.
I liked it better if she just got sick of him.
Right? That would make more sense.
That'd be even more relatable to me. And then he starts dating this other person. But yeah, I thought that was I didn't hate that scene, but I didn't like the overall like you just described.
So we jump back to the Chekhov and Uhura and they're undercover, and they have an agent they're working with named Jade, who of course was all mysterious, and they're working with the Klingon, meeting with the Klingon court, and they're trying to buy a bunch of stuff. And then we end that scene with Chekhov and Uhura getting shot. And I'm sorry, there's just it's one of those false cliffhanger endings because there's no way that you believe that they're dead. And then immediately the very next chapter that has them, we skip a chapter, then come back to them. Like, they're under the shuttle, and we know they're about to be burned up. And then, of course, it switches perspectives. Like, the shuttle takes off, and anything under it was burned to death. And you're just like, they're not still under it. You want to make us think that? I don't know. It was frustrating. It just, yeah. I don't know. It felt false.
Yeah.
So we go back to Kirk in Starfleet, and they're celebrating the new commander-in-chief of Starfleet, Androvar Jake, or whatever, Drake, his name is. And, of course, he's a Shatner foil. He's very
Yeah.
close to Kirk, but like if Kirk had been bad,
Yeah.
essentially, right? And if he
Uh,
got bitter over losing his wife instead of accepted that he lost his son, I think that the whole scene where he's at the thing with the event for Drake with Spock and McCoy, and
yeah.
seeing Talani across the room, and
Mhm.
like over and over again they say she doesn't even look 20, she's got to be 19, and I'm just like, dude,
Mhm.
no. And then
I could,
essentially he just plays as Kirk's giving up Carol for a teenager, and that bothered me a lot. Like it's
I
past the midlife crisis stage, the old life
yeah,
crisis.
yeah, it is. Even in this day and age.
I think I would have bought it better had we revealed at the end that Talani wasn't actually in love with him and had just been playing him the whole time. The fact that later she's like, "I was sincerely in love with you," I'm like, that was hard to swallow.
Yeah, that when we get to that point, I know we're jumping ahead, but I kept thinking of my Requiem from Methuselah thing. Like, you're in love with her? You just met her 6 hours ago. I feel like Taylani has affection for him. I don't know if she was in love with him.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think she developed an affection for him, but I
She
yeah.
seemed very naive in romance, like she might not even know what being in love meant,
Yes, I
even by the end.
that's well, actually that's why I was uncomfortably going to go next, which is yeah, I think Kirk was like looking way past that, like, oh, she knows what she's doing, and she was turns out as far as that goes, no, it's new. She hasn't figured that out yet either. And I thought the one thing that made me kind of hold off on it was like, oh, maybe they're actually older than they are because of the planet or
Right?
whatever. And then we
Right.
get eventually like, nope, that's not what it was. I'm like, uh,
What?
oh, that
Yeah.
now
No,
I'm even more
no.
confused.
In the book or book, the audiobook. First of all, I don't remember there being any mention of Carol at all.
Oh, okay.
Um, I think the pace just like blew right through a lot of these things, and it was a
Yeah.
uh very much a like a double episode feel to it, or maybe
Mm.
a triple or whatever. However, just something. It did feel like just I don't know, the action pace. Wait, let me back up a little bit here. There was plenty enough time to feel uncomfortable, but you were sort of like being dragged along through Kirk's perspective through most of what they did in the
Yeah.
audiobook.
Hmm.
There was a brief bit where they jumped away to what the crew was seeing,
Mhm.
or being led to believe, but for the most part, we're riding along with him. So you're kind of like, okay, you can see how he might be swept up in whatever's happening. He seems reasonably reluctant about it, but at the end, there's very much I mean, they leave the implication there that they're all much older um than they look, and I don't believe they were hammered home that she wasn't, at least not in that version.
Can't
Okay.
remember if we ever actually find out her age.
I'm pretty sure. Well, they're definitely saying that she's in the second generation, the younger generation,
Yeah,
and the
right.
people in the older generation were like 40.
Yeah.
So
Huh?
Yeah.
yeah,
Uh,
I'm pretty sure they confirmed she was like 19 or 20.
when he's first
What?
looking at her at the party, I was just like, oh, he's looking at a very pretty girl. He can't stop looking at her. And then when it becomes a bigger thing, yeah, it's like, oh, that's really weird. And I I think I
I,
was oddly with McCoy and Spock, even though I was like, well, hey man, good for him, but also you guys are probably right. This isn't gonna end well. And they were, but to a point.
yeah,
But
man, they cleaned that up a lot then,
yeah.
because it was, they would periodically hit uh that age button every now and then, and
Mhm.
some of the reluctance and so on.
Yeah.
And along the way, I noticed how they were, especially when they were talking about the ship that he got,
Mhm.
well, the Enterprise, when he got it back, and
Yeah.
it was being, the crew all seemed really young and
Yeah.
robust and vibrant, and they kept hitting
Yeah.
that point. It's like,
I
and then
yeah.
once that reveal came, it's like, oh, okay, this is the whole thing the whole time. It's okay now, and they never disabused of the audience of any of that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
interesting.
and just to beat a dead horse, when we did Wrath of Khan, we talked about how God, it was great this adult relationship of people that are in their 50s or whatever, and how great this is, and this is this isn't necessarily rolling that back, but it's just falling into a different the same old trope that we still have in Hollywood. But although I feel like we have more movies with older people together, but we still also have lots of movies with men whose love interests are a lot younger than them. And I'm not judging because I'm that kettle black, but yeah. Anyway, that's not what this book was about. It was about Kirk and people that seem to have eternal youth, which is what it's very appealing. And I thought that's where we were going. And then we finally get to the point where it's like, oh, that's not what's going to happen. Which I feel like that's when he starts to wake up like, oh, okay. He was buying into that. And he actually, I think he uses the Spock line of, well, Spock says there are always possibilities. So, maybe this is the real thing, but yeah.
Well, I want to jump back to the Drake reception because I have a couple other notes I want to mention. That when Drake says something to Kirk about, oh, I forgot you're not going to have any grandkids. Like, could you set him up to be any more of a jerk?
Yeah.
Because he's referencing David, like, oh, something to tell your grandkids. Oh, wait, I forgot your son's dead, essentially. That was, oof, like, villain immediately. Also, Shatner really bends over backwards to retcon his Star Trek 6 racism not being authentic. Where he's like, yeah, I said that I'll never forgive Klingons for the killing my son, but I didn't mean it. I was just angry and I immediately regretted saying it. And I'm like, that's not how it played in the movie.
Yeah.
So Kirk and Talani go to Kirk's Iowa farmhouse. There's an attack. There's a cool secret tunnel between the house and the barn that I really wanted to just see and spend more time in. And then in the whole barn thing, like, their attackers are suddenly dead. But don't worry, they're just trying to stop us from going to find the Fountain of Youth. So Talani and Kirk, let's go first have sex in the car, and then we'll go to the Fountain of Youth.
Yeah.
The fake out of that scene where after they have sex, they look back in the hover car that the attackers came and takes off from the farm, and they're like, "Well, it must have been a third one we didn't find." It was like, I mean, I already knew. I remember. I've read this book at least half a dozen times, and even though it's been a while, this was one I reread over and over again. I remembered, that what it was, but I was like, yeah, that wasn't. I don't think it was a very good fake out, but I don't know if you might disagree, because I'm like, if they had seen the thing take off right away, that might be different. The fact that it was after their sex, I was like,
I don't remember if they've really made it clear that they were having sex at this point, whatever was going on in that scene, at least as far as the audiobook was concerned. But the way it played for me, it seemed pretty convincing. I mean, for both of us when we were listening, it just seemed, oh, okay. I mean, the aside was perfectly fine. I wasn't really suspecting much of anything, or I mean, it was just like once they got to the planet and started explaining things to some extent, or as those things were gradually revealed, I started immediately putting those things back together, as far as like the interrogations and so on. They dropped the hint along the way that every time they try to interrogate them, that they would kill themselves instead of
interesting.
During torture. I think it might have been Drake who mentioned something like that in the briefing.
See, I don't think that was ever mentioned in the book at all. Maybe they did that so they could simplify and not talk about other things. I did think it was interesting when Kirk was like reminiscing about past women during the sex thing. They were all from TOS episodes. Like, the TOS episodes were 3 years of 60 years of him hooking up with women, but all the women he remembers are from specific TOS episodes we've seen. Yeah. Could you throw in one or two that we've never heard of before?
And then,
or maybe throw in Antonia, who they mentioned in Generations, but we've never heard of before. I'd like to know what happened there.
And maybe that's what it was trying to point to, because I'm like, wait a minute, how do you not mention Eve the Keeler?
Well, I think that she wasn't the traditionally sexy love interest, so that's not what Shatner's going to write about.
That's what I figured is like, okay, here's some sexy young things he hit. He was actually in love with.
I do think if you want to justify it being his TOS era lovers, you could say that part of Talani is him thinking back to his youth. But the thing is, then he should be thinking of his Academy lovers, not his TOS era lovers, right? Like, they didn't go far enough back for that parallel to work.
Yeah, like Ruth from Shortly.
Yeah. So then we go to Spock's Paris apartment in the Vulcan embassy, and this is the scene I've brought up in this podcast before, where McCoy comes to visit, and Kirk's there, and Kirk's like, "How do you have McCoy's drinks, but not my stuff?"
Yeah, yeah.
I love that scene so much. To me, that is still something, obviously, fundamental sticks in my mind about the real nature of the relationship of the three of them. It clicks for me in a way that I wish canon acknowledged. Of course, Spock and McCoy are deeply disapproving, uh,
Huh.
but Kirk takes it to the extreme where he's like, "Well, I guess our friendship's over." Like he doesn't say that to them, but that's like
What?
the narrative in Kirk's head is it's from his perspective. He doesn't say that loud,
Wow.
but as he leaves the apartment, it says like, "Well, I didn't think our friendship would end like this," and it's just like, "Whoa, dude, you just met the girl. You've got to pause for a second."
Mhm.
Hmm.
I was
Well, this,
very intrigued that Kirk and Talani were in the spaceport and his perspective on what it was like as a civilian versus in Starfleet you could just beam up and as a civilian you're going to spend hours going through the spaceport and stuff. I was like,
Yeah.
that's so cool. But then he just circumvents it because Talani's like, nope, I got a private yacht. Skip the line, come on. But then Kirk commits by far, I think, the worst sin in this book. He dumps Carol by voicemail.
Yeah. Uh, yeah. And he struggles with what to say on it, which he should.
Yeah, but he's like, well, I guess I'll just leave a voicemail because I don't have time to try again.
In an era of video calls, where I mean, we live in one right now. It seems like he could have contacted her that way.
Right?
Which reminds me now that I think I've referenced Mad Magazine Looks at the Future, one of my favorite collections of their stuff. And one of them was, in the future, people have to be very careful and answer their video phones. And of course, it was a woman getting out of the shower and getting on the phone, or getting on her video phone. But which I guess, I don't know if I guess people were probably smart enough to just let it go to voicemail instead of answering their FaceTiming someone. And I mean, I'm sure it's happening on purpose, but not on accident. But anyway,
Yeah.
I digress.
They did mention in the spaceport that there were clocks that showed the times and dates of Earth, the Moon, and Mars. First of all, there's only one time for all of Earth,
Yeah.
one time for all the Moon.
huh.
Like, maybe they finally did go to a global meantime, which would be
Yeah.
great. But then, how often are the dates different on Mars and the Moon? And also, if there's only one time on Earth, wouldn't they just match those times? It just didn't make a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense.
I mean, or just say they all go by star date now, and this is the star date
Yeah.
system. I don't know. It just didn't make But then we're just they really hammer home in the end of that scene that Kirk is leaving Starfleet, Carol, and his friends for this fling. He says for love, but he's leaving everything for this woman he met the night before.
Huh.
Yeah,
I really wish there'd been some more fallout. It was
It-
way too. He did not actually face consequences for it.
There's none of this. I mean, there's really none of that
Oh,
justification. Is sort of I can't remember exactly how they transitioned. Honestly, it didn't feel like there was any. There's certainly none of that. It was sort of like Spock and McCoy. If I remember them saying anything at all at the party, it was more like that kind of general ha ha ha, wink nudge,
yeah.
side something like that maybe, but it wasn't.
That was all it was at the party. But then we had a whole scene in Spock's apartment later.
Well, and for me, it leans into. I mean, again, it's the unearned love. It's the Requiem for Methuselah thing. You just met her 6 hours ago. I don't care what your age, and I don't care how beautiful Taylani is. There's got, so in my mind, it was like, well, beyond even a midlife crisis thing, it's like, well, I get to have a ship and have a new life, if you will. But it still seems like a lot to give up for, yeah.
Wow, it just there was just really none of that kind of deliberation. It was more like he was kind of stumbling through and falling into these things as they were coming up.
I mean, that's not a bad take on it.
Well, I mean, yeah, it wasn't like he was being offered these things as enticements. It was just sort of like he was going to help her or something, or there's something. I feel like he went to meet with her for something, or she showed up in his house or his apartment, and that's what it was. It was something like that. Like she surprised him somewhere. Then they
Yep.
used the attack to motivate him to keep moving forward without it without there ever being any sort of like discussion about meaning him leaving Starfleet or anything. Like I think he already had decided.
Well, yeah, he decided at the party that
Yeah,
like, well, he'd already decided to leave Starfleet, but then when he saw Drake was the commander in chief, he's like, well, that decision was correct. There's definitely nothing for me in
yeah,
Starfleet anymore.
right.
But yeah. So Talani takes him up in space on her private yacht, but they're not taking the yacht to Chaw. They're taking her brand new ride, the Enterprise A, of course. And not only does she have the Enterprise A, even though they've scraped the name and call sign off of it and everything, and like taken away half the good tech, but she also has Scotty on board to sweeten the pot. So at that point, you're like, oh, I really wish they give him more explanation. I kind of bought Scotty's like, well, I didn't really see anything to work on either, and they're gonna let me stay on the Enterprise, so of course I'll go. But then, like later, when everything goes down, he's not, he doesn't even consider leaving, and I'm like, I feel like he should be less invested in this, or
Hmm.
they should have had some other motivation for him besides just you got to keep working on the Enterprise.
And I kept thinking like, because this isn't the same Enterprise from the 5-year mission, right? How many? This is like two.
This is the Enterprise A. This is the one they got after Star Trek 4.
Okay, yeah. So, yeah,
But in canon, I think they flew around on it for like 10 years or something before they retired. So,
I guess that makes sense then,
yeah.
to a point.
I did really like the poeticness of the end of that chapter where they basically describe the Enterprise and the Excelsior passing in the night
Yeah.
as the Excelsior comes to Earth and the Enterprise rockets away. That was cool.
The foreshadowing that they're going to get together at some point.
They're describing Drake's office, and they talk about all the like signs of the fourth whatever and fourth world and all the Colonel Green and all that stuff. And I was like, did he not have Confederate flags and swastikas? I mean, that's what it felt like they were describing. But then they
Yeah.
also talked about he's got all these symbols from the dawn of interstellar exploration. I'm like, well, then of course you'd count out the Confederate flag and the swastikas, except that Colonel Green and the Fourth World was also before interstellar exploration. That was World War III, which was also before the Vulcans came.
Yeah.
So I don't. In the comic graphic novel, they did actually draw a swastika in the office. I was
Hmm.
pleased with that inclusion because that was a good shorthand for what they were trying to get across.
Who is this?
You know, yeah, Drake's office.
Huh.
Yeah, the new head of Starfleet. Because so
No,
Sulu and
what who drew what in the office? I'm a little confused as to what.
they describe, so Chekhov and Sulu Uhura go to meet Drake in his office, and they describe the office, and they're talking
Ah,
about all these like mementos of past wars, but like the losing sides and stuff, the
gotcha.
fascists. Yeah.
Ah,
So yeah, they go in. It's just he's such a villain. And then of course there's the reveal that Jade, the secret agent that betrayed Chekhov and Uhura, is his daughter. I did forget that detail. I didn't necessarily
hmm.
see it coming, but also like, does it really matter? They never did much with that character. I felt like that could have been such an interesting character. In the end, she's just like, yeah, Dad, I don't really agree with you. I think you and Kirk are basically the same. And also, I'm not going to betray you, but I'm also just not going to, yeah, like completely buy into your thing. She was such a wasted character
I
that they could
agree.
have been, with just a few tweaks, she could have been a really interesting part of it. I really expected in the end her to like stand up to her dad in the climax and be like, Dad, you're going too far. But nah,
Yeah. I thought there was going to be something more with her, and there just wasn't.
there wasn't, no. So at this point, they now have Spock and McCoy in with Chekhov and Sulu and Uhura on this mission. So of course they know there's something going on with Kirk. There's definitely a conspiracy. We're gonna have everybody there. They all decide that Kirk's just being used and manipulated, which yeah.
Hmm.
I did like the detail of Chekhov noticing Spock lying, which
Mhm.
clued him
Yeah,
off to like, oh, Spock knows what's going on here. I'll keep my mouth shut too, and we'll wait, and then we'll compare notes after Drake's gone. And I liked that
fun.
Chekhov
Yeah.
knew Spock so well.
How did you guys
And they
feel
don't know
about-
where Chal is, so that's why they have to do this like spy stuff and try to follow Kirk, is because they don't know where they're going
I
to
don't know
find
if the
this.
graphic novel much, but how did you feel about like or Spock and McCoy being bad at undercover work?
I mean,
It made me laugh, but I didn't know if it made sense.
I mean, to me, it harkened back to Star Trek 4, the fish out of water stuff.
Yeah.
And that was not too long ago in the timeline. But you
Yeah.
are right that I think they would have been a little bit better at it by
Yeah,
this point.
they've done it before. I mean, they didn't have to. They didn't. Fortunately, they didn't have to use any kind of story about getting their ears caught in a rice picker. But
Right?
they've done undercover or
Right?
Spock, he's done good stuff before. So,
So we find out from Chekhov that he's investigated Drake before for Kirk. Because Chekhov's security and intelligence now. That's just Chekhov's thing, which they kind of pointed to in the movies, but not so explicitly. And Chekhov reveals that Drake's the one that gave David the protomatter that led to David's death and all the bad stuff. So, yeah. I did like how that paid off in the end, where Drake like tells Kirk, "I'm going to get my revenge on you," and Kirk's like, "You already did." Because you essentially killed my son.
Well, I mean, so I guess is the argument that Drake entrapped David kind of. He's like, hey, I got some protomatter over here. I mean, I'm just saying, if you want some, I got it for you. And
yeah, well, I think he wanted David's research to pay off. I think he was part of that, but I think also part of it was, this kid's expendable. I don't give a crap about him because he's Kirk's
that's a
son.
good point too. Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
I think he almost says that. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, it is. We do get the detail that Drake's keeping all of this other stuff from the rest of Starfleet. So he's only talking to Kirk's command crew, and it's definitely a conspiracy. And they're definitely setting Kirk up. So, yeah. Oof, rough. Kirk's sideburns are shaved off at this point in a very erotic shaving scene.
Yeah.
With the Klingon knife. That scene has also stuck in my mind of, I don't have sideburns anymore, but it made shaving sound very sexy.
I like the idea that they're retconning everyone's sideburns from TOS as Starfleet issue, which, hey, I'm not mad about it. I just think it's fascinating.
Well, then you get the throwaway that, Scotty had to shave his by himself. Poor guy.
Right.
The graphic novel didn't even bother. They kept their sideburns for the whole graphic novel.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It just a reminder that anytime Scotty gets in a relationship, it's never good. So they were just like, we're not even gonna bother anymore.
No.
So I vaguely remember them mentioning something to that effect in the audiobook. I don't think it was drawn out in such a sensual way necessarily, but so it seemed as though they were saying that their sideburns are so distinctive that they would automatically be identified as Starfleet just by having these sideburns.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because nobody else has sideburns in the 23rd century, unless you're Starfleet. If you're a human, anyway.
When did they establish that?
Well, I think, so to my mind, it was like, there's a certain haircut that you consider the military haircut, right? Of when you join the military, they cut your hair short, and it's very distinctive, and it's very, obvious. When a military, fresh, recruit to the military guy, goes off base and walks out, he looks military because of the hair and everything. So I think that was the parallel they were making there.
Interesting.
Wasn't the wonderful scene where Scotty drank the green sludge, and so they got a free pitcher of blue beer, so that because he had to get rid of those worms. I liked that whole sequence.
Yeah.
Then we get to Kirk. We learn about Kirk and Estes is the pilot. I thought it was interesting. They had this youth, and I'll talk about more of him in a second. He was the only other member of the species we got to know besides Talani. And again, a character that could have been interesting that they kind of wasted. This book was a scant 300 pages. I think it could have been a better 340, 350 page book if you developed a couple of these side characters a little better. But they do talk about Shaw, that it's 90% ocean, which is more than our planet, of course. Its largest city only has 1,000 people, which I appreciated we didn't have to worry about 50,000 colonists we don't even see. But it also was convenient enough to deal with the whole civilization.
Yeah, it's also very harkened back to lots of the episodes where we're like, oh, it's a whole planet, but we just see 60 of the people that live there.
Yeah.
So
well, they say 90% ocean, so you think there's not a lot of landmass, but our planet's 70% ocean, so it's not that much different.
Yeah.
So they talk about how they only have to farm a few weeks per year because everything grows so well and everybody's well taken care of. So it sounds really Eden-like and
Uh,
nice, which is great. Then we get back to the Excelsior, and Rand and Uhura are sharing a station. Rand completely wasted in this book. The only time she's even mentioned is like, oh, her and Uhura are over there chatting together, and that's it. And it comes up several times, but that's all the further they go with her. It's like, why even include Janice Rand if you're gonna not even give her like a line or something?
yeah, it's
She
very
deserved better.
fan service doesn't even rise to that level. So yeah, it's like, what are we doing here?
Also, if you're gonna do Janice Rand, where's Chapel? Just
Yeah.
asking. Yeah. So Spock goes to science. Sulu says Chekhov is their designated criminal, which I think is supposed to be funny, but Chekhov doesn't take it that way. Yeah, well.
Mm.
Solani and Kirk are riding horse-like creatures because Kirk's always got to be on a horse.
Of course.
Of course. They attack their parents. Yeah, I guess their parents are trying to destroy Chal. That's what we're told. And Kirk's not going to stop to figure out their motivation, really. Yeah, the undercover Chekhov trying to help Spock and Kirk was fun. I definitely felt like it was similar to Kirk dealing with them sometimes in some of the best scenes. Also, that bar fight seemed like a really fun action sequence. I could easily picture it in my head, like
Yep.
TOS episode style.
Yeah, I enjoyed that. I thought the those action sequences like that, I thought they were well written, well done.
I know it was like 3 panels in the graphic novel. I'm like, they should have
Yeah.
at least done a 2-page spread.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now Kirk tells Scotty everything. Scott judges, not only gets judgy, but refuses to even beam down to the planet. Do you guys buy that Scotty's like, nope, I'm not even going to be tempted by eternal youth? I feel like Scotty would have beamed down.
I agree with you on that. I think that was just an easy way to be like, nope, he's going to stay here. It's like he wasn't saying come down and do the terrible things I've been, or do anything terrible. He's just like, yeah, why wouldn't you want to? Yeah, I get the sentiment of I don't want to live forever or whatever, but don't you want to live a little longer?
And be a little healthier. Because at this point,
better,
Scotty's not in the best of health, so.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I totally agree.
The Excelsior wonders if Kirk has purposely left them a trail to follow. The comic book basically makes it clear he has, like set up a trail that only his friends could follow. But there's nothing in this book that indicates Kirk actually left them a trail on purpose that would want them to follow. And I wondered if that would pay off later, and nope, nothing, just dropped.
Yeah.
So the jungle attack, we learn about the secret deflector in the collar, so you can't be shot if it's turned on.
Oh yeah.
That's almost immediately like suspicious, and I was glad Kirk at that point was like, okay, I'm beaming up with this prisoner by myself because I need some answers. But then they send in the attackers from the farm to deal with it. Can't you pick anybody else? Why are these two suddenly making an appearance now? I mean, if Talani's really trying to hide it from him, I don't know why it's those two that go in.
Uh-huh.
So then the Excelsior fights some Klingon battle cruisers, and Sulu jumps in the pilot's seat. I'm like, come on, I know he's a good pilot, but he's the captain. You don't just jump in the pilot seat whenever. Like, does that happen all the time? Every time there's an attack, the pilot's like, well, I'm not going to get to drive anyway.
Well, yeah, it was because they were doing that specific maneuver. Isn't that what they were trying to say? Is like, oh, he's done this before, so he should do it.
Well, later they bring him in for the slingshot maneuver.
Oh,
but this was, yeah, it was a tricky maneuver of like scooping up and underneath the Klingon, but there wasn't anything necessary. He's like, oh, Kirk always wanted me to try that, but he indicated he never tried it. I guess, I don't know. I guess maybe it was a tricky maneuver only he could do, but they definitely implied like that he takes the pilot's controls frequently, which I guess captain's prerogative, but.
Yeah, I agree.
So Drake arrives in the middle of space, shows up in his super-powered shuttle, and then blames Kirk for everything and spins this whole bullcrap tale. At this point, Kirk's unconscious, and that's a flashback memory to David of 3 months old, where Kirk's about to become captain for the first time, and Carol makes him leave. That's inconsistent with canon, right? In Wrath of Khan, doesn't Kirk not know he had a son?
Yeah,
or does he know he had one but had forgotten, like had never seen him grown up?
I thought the idea was he was dreaming of something that never happened. Dreaming of
Oh, I thought that was supposed to be an authentic memory
no,
of
I thought
Carol making him leave after David's birth because she don't want David to get attached.
that was all a dream or whatever or wishful thinking.
Okay.
I mean,
Okay.
it's weird to have wishful thinking that I was around my kid and I got kicked out. Maybe that's better than just not knowing. I don't know. I'm not sure which is worse. Neither one's good, but
So Kirk confronts Talani after he wakes up, and she's like, "I love you" or something, or "Don't you love me?" And his response is, "I love my work," which is a great response, and also her slapping him is a great response to his great response. I love that. They make a point in that scene of saying she's barely dressed, you can see through her clothes, and then she jumps on him as the transport comes, and they even like make comments on the bridge that you can see through. Stephen, you will be sad to hear the graphic novel drew her clothes not at all see through. She was actually wearing like clothes.
well, I guess I don't need to see that. I mean, neither will match my imagination either way. But
So then Spock starts giving away Kirk coded secrets, but not that coded because Drake immediately picks up on it. And then Kirk does a cool little warp into the atmosphere and back out thing that is really neat and tricky.
I can see why Kendrick Lamar wrote all those diss tracks about Drake.
Wow.
I can't believe it took me this long to get to it. I got there.
Spock puts all the clues together, but then Drake acts totally reasonable when confronted, which just throws even more suspicion that he's hiding stuff. So then we go into the armory and we find out the secret that not only was this genetic engineering, these people, but also they butchered humans and used live human tissue to enhance them. Oof. I thought it was a cool reveal. I thought it was an interesting concept. They were built to be survivors, not warriors, which I liked a lot. Like, this is our backup plan for civilization surviving. But it was so brutal. And, oof. I don't know. I did not have any problem with this reveal or this thing. I thought it was well done.
It wasn't where I thought we were going for sure. And then I liked that her reaction was, "Oh my God, this is," and I mean, I guess all of our reactions would be that way, but
yeah.
So yeah, and I like the idea of my brain was not struggling, but it was like, what would it be like for? And of course, I love that there was a bird of prey.
Yes.
He even goes out of his way to say it's one of the old, like the old style. And
they did draw that into the graphic novel. So
okay, the idea of that being buried underground somehow to me is fascinating. I thought that was. I just kept thinking though, I wouldn't want to be walking under a bird of prey.
Well, they said the ceiling was at least 200 meters high. Yeah. That's like 2 football fields, right? Roughly?
Yeah.
Stacked on top of each other?
Yeah.
That's really, really high.
Yeah, that is. Yeah.
So Kirk destroys.
I don't feel like, sorry, I was going to say, I don't feel like the reveal was, I don't know. It's hard for me to recall how detailed it was exactly, but I don't feel like I got the full gruesome picture. I got it. I mean, I got the gist that there had been these atrocities of some sort that had happened, some sort of experimentation, perhaps, but it didn't really feel like I got the full picture somehow. But it felt like enough to justify. I liked the way everything just sort of came together there. It did feel like the journey and the ride were, well set up and well revealed, but I feel like something's missing or something was missing.
In my brain, and maybe it's because this is Star Trek in my mind from the 80s, this was like the coolest mall ever, and it was underground. That's what it was in my brain, in my imagination.
There was really one glaringly racist panel in the comic in this reveal. The butchering stuff was fine. That was relatively chaste, normal mix of Starfleet officers that looked normal. But they mention that one of the displays like shows humans brutally murdering Klingons and Romulans as like motivation of this is what they're afraid of. And in that panel where they showed that, all of the humans in that panel were gorilla shaped and all black skinned. Like giant, like twice as tall as the Romulans and Klingons, big muscular, like big, like broad, like almost gorilla-like rather than human-like, and all black black men.
Do you mean
It was
silhouettes?
it was pretty awful.
Huh.
What do you mean silhouettes, or they were clearly
No, no,
African
no.
features
Hang
of some
on.
sort? Is it feels like
Patreon will be able to see this, as will you. I will go ahead and pull this up because
Especially in light of the whole idea that the whole thing was they were trying to frighten everyone of these humans are going to come and do these terrible things.
right.
Right. Keep going.
So
Stephen can't stand to see it.
I don't blame him. It's a really awful panel. Here it is.
Huh.
All the yellow shirts are the Starfleet officers.
That is
You
strange.
see what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
they look animalistic
Hmm.
and super awful. The yellow shirts, Steven, are the
Right.
Oh, I
human.
see what you're saying.
Like, is this panel just absolutely awful?
Huh.
So when was this made?
So the book came out in 95.
Jesus. All right. Well, already
I
that's
don't
just
know
like,
when the graphic novel came out, but it would have been after that.
wow.
I mean, I guess it makes sense that they're trying to paint the humans in a bad light, so using racism, I don't know, you could bend over backwards to justify it, but I just don't feel like it was acceptable. Uh, that's, oh yeah, it says the graphic novel was also published in 1995.
Hmm.
So it was made contemporaneously with the novel.
Huh.
Anyway, they mentioned that Drake feels Kirk's responsible for his wife because Drake wanted to go to the war with the Klingons, and it was Kirk's fault the Organians stopped the war. It's
Right.
really stretching who you're blaming and why,
That is a reach of all reaches.
right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Like I feel like Drake is we always talk about the Commodores who are incompetent, but he's just pure snidely whiplashing evil. So
Yeah.
and maybe incompetent too.
So then Shatner gets really cheeky because he puts a line in the book that says, "And I gave the order I've never given before. Beat me up, Scotty."
Yep. I like that too. It took me
I
a
knew
second
you all
after
would.
reading it. I was like, yep, no, that's good. Yep.
Yeah. Right? Drake mentions that there are still 7 Starfleet officers that are part of Admiral Cartwright's conspiracy left
Mhm.
in command.
Yeah.
It's not what Kirk's books follow up upon. We never go back to that.
Yeah.
It's like if you're going to mention there's 7, there should be some hint that they might be rooted out or something. It was so specific. So now the crew's all back on the Enterprise because they're helping Kirk. I was like, oh, well, now Essius makes sense as a character because Sulu's the only one that's not there, and he's in Sulu's station. That there's a there's a ton of great one-liners in this scene. I think Shatner was really, really flowing, getting the whole crew back together in his writing. Yeah. But then Chekhov just got over his stuff with Sulu. That was just like, okay, I'm over it. Also, what I just said about Essius is almost immediately erased because then Sulu beams over too. After we've got like everybody's in place except Sulu's been replaced by the one character we met. But nope, here comes Sulu. The Klingon or Drake's going to try to slingshot around the sun. We know the Klingon ship can do it, and we know the Enterprise A the upgrade on Constitution class can do it, but we're not sure if Excelsior can. So we got to send the Enterprise A after them in case they succeed, and we have to follow them. Time travel mechanics that they explained. I guess upgraded Starfleet ships can't do it anymore because they're like, that's too dangerous. So let's design a ship that can't slingshot. I don't know.
Yeah. As much as I've liked referencing slingshotting past the sun in my life, and I do it quite often, it just makes it too easy. They can Austin Powers it, like in the second Austin Powers, what was the second Austin Powers? Spy Who Shagged Me.
That was it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's when the daughter tells Drake that Kirk reminds her of him, which is I thought that was a fun line. Yeah. Even though it didn't pay off. Then we get another one of those scenes where we see the Enterprise from Drake's perspective get destroyed by the sun. And of course, none of us believe for a second anybody's still on it, except Drake. Drake still thinks they're all on it, and it's like, come on. Ugh.
See, there's the incompetency of Drake.
Then Kirk calls him, so we know they don't leave us like waiting very long.
Yeah.
And Kirk still calls him Admiral, which I thought was a step too far. Kirk treating him decently and offering to rescue
Yeah.
him, I'm okay with. But Kirk still calling him his respected title after all of this bothered me a lot. I think he should be using his first name or something. Like, you don't give him the respect of the title at that point.
I don't know. See, I think it can work both ways there. I mean, it could just as easily be sort of like a way to really rub it in, to calling him
Yeah.
Admiral. It's just that
Oh,
kind
hey,
of like,
Admiral.
yeah, yeah,
Going
exactly. It's just,
Admiral Drake.
I guess if he says it the way Steven does, that's
That's
no,
how I
it's-
address every admiral. But I don't know that. I don't think I've ever met an admiral.
but then, but then there's also the just that's another way of like going overboard high road, which is still an irritating thing to do to somebody
Yeah.
under those circumstances.
yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah.
The book goes out of its way to say that Drake knew he was committing suicide by making the ship fly
Mhm.
and was going to kill himself and his daughter anyway. I did like Kirk's line about, well, captains have to be invincible, it's the job, but also, like, dude, no, he killed himself and his daughter. It'd be one thing to kill himself, but that he killed his daughter as well.
Yeah, like, is the idea that he's just crazy? Because I feel like, as a narcissist myself, I wouldn't want to kill myself, no matter what, how much
I think
hate
it's got to. I think they implied that he was just too prideful to admit he was wrong. He'd rather die than admit he was wrong.
Mm.
Yeah.
So then Chekhov apologizes to Sulu, and they're like, "Oh no, we're family. We just get along sometimes, and we don't. It's fine." Psh. Kirk gives Talani the Enterprise plaque. Huge problem with that to me. She has no connection to
Yeah.
the ship. He
Yeah.
does. That's a plaque you're taking home. And even if you don't want to take it home, you give it to one of your main guys that came to rescue you. You don't give it to Talani, who you just met.
Well, she bought it, so. Yeah.
I mean, the whole explanation they give is the crew will never really die if she tells their stories to her grandkids. And since none of them have kids, other than Sulu, which isn't mentioned in this at all, that, you know, that's the way that they get to live on, is through the story she tells. I did like the little tongue-in-cheek where he said, "Look, it says where no man has gone before in the plaque. I hear they're updating that for the Enterprise B."
I like that too.
Okay.
Yeah, I was trying to think of what other plaques he could have given her, like Sarek slept here or things like that. Yeah, different parts.
Made me up Scotty bumper sticker. I Grok Spock.
Never forget. Yeah.
Maybe it was just a replica.
No, it's the sole original. It says he grabbed it on the bridge right before they left, and yeah.
He could have done like a switcheroo or something. Maybe copied it and then given it to her.
Nope. I mean, those are all good theories, but nothing in the book supports them.
I wrote on the Enterprise, and all I got was this crappy plaque saying,
We're so unsentimental about losing the Enterprise A. They were so sad about losing the original Enterprise. Enterprise A, they're just like, whatever. That bothered me a bit. The Enterprise is such a main character in these shows and movies that I wanted them to mourn for half a second, and they didn't. They got rid of it so casually.
And maybe that gets to my thing of like, how many times can we blow the Enterprise up, or threaten to blow the Enterprise up and be like, oh my God. So maybe that's understated cheekiness from Shatner. Like, who cares anymore? We just keep doing it anyway.
Yeah.
First time, yeah, oh my God. The fourth time, okay. Now I know my math may not be correct, but just and I'm going to Kelvin Universe, Star Trek Beyond, when the saucer separates and all that. The saucer separating those I always enjoy. So I'm contradicting myself slightly, but because that's what happens here, right? Didn't they saucer separate, right?
No, nope. They just destroyed the whole thing. It just all got destroyed by the sun, gravity.
Oh yeah.
The possibility of Kirk being the new commander-in-chief of Starfleet's raised. He's like, nope. And they're like, is it too old? He's like, nope. It's just because I'm not the right person for it. I'm like, no, he's not. He's not. Absolutely. I agree. They make a big deal where he's like, no, and I'm also not going to try to be a captain anymore. Like, that's passing to Harriman. I just got to figure out what else I'm going to do. The graphic novel ended differently in that they mentioned the CNC thing, and he's like, no, it should go to somebody else. I've got other adventures to go on, and then it just has a shot of the Enterprise B. It ends, so it implies like Kirk is going to get the Enterprise B, and I'm like, because Harriman's never even mentioned in the graphic novel. And I'm like, in a certain way, I guess that makes sense to do that as the implication. But at the same time, Generations already came out. You already know that's not how it goes down. I was a little bothered that the graphic novel chose that change, because in the book, there's never any question about him getting the Enterprise B. It's Harriman's from the beginning. They mention it a few times throughout. And we get the epilogue where Kirk's body is stolen. Riker's called away because there's an attack, and then Spock watches the transporter lights come out of the grave and the rocks collapse. Which, like I said, Shatner wrote like 12 books in this series. The next one's called The Return, and you'll never guess what happens, but it picks up after Kirk's death on Veridian 3. So now we're in the 24th century for the rest of the books. You'll never guess. You'll never guess who comes back to life.
Eden?
Marge Hedford.
Talani.
Oh. And it's going to involve that whole story, his other 11 books. They get into the Borg, they get into Mirror Universe, they get into Janeway, they get into all kinds of crazy stuff. He takes full advantage of what the 90s Trek was offering.
Yeah.
And puts Kirk right in the middle of it all, of course.
Yeah.
As he should.
So, yeah. So anyway, I have not actually read them all. I think I've read the first 6, and I enjoyed them quite a bit. One of them is called Preserver. That might have been the last one I read, but that'll tie into the Preserver stuff they set up in Ashes of Eden. So I'm pretty sure they do tie into some things that were set up in this book and the other ones, even though it's like a 80-year time jump. So
I think we talked about this, but didn't he write all those Tech War books too?
yeah, that's a whole different series as an end to a Star Trek. I've never read them. I do remember when the TV show came out, I wanted to watch it, and then it got canceled like almost immediately.
Okay. But I thought he had some good success with that too, but I couldn't tell you anything about him.
I think they sold decently.
Yeah.
So anyway, yep. I don't have any other note. Do you? Any of you have any other notes, or should we get to ranking as much as we can rank?
Yeah, I don't have any other notes. Yeah, just
Nope.
nope.
Okay. So who was your annoyance in this book? I mean, if you pick anyone other than Drake, come on.
I was trying to think of somebody else.
I think that's it.
Yeah. The only other thing that's coming to mind is there was a little bit of McCoy Vulcan racism. Vulcan.
Oh yeah, but that's not annoying. That's just lovable old racist. Who are you gonna drink with?
Kirk. I'm going very chalk, very basic.
I mean, I'm going Spock and McCoy, and hopefully I will have enough drinks with them that my drink fixins will already be in Spock's apartment.
I would say if I was going what people would think I was going to pick, I'd say Talani, but no, I'm going with my guy Kirk.
I'm proud of you.
Thank you.
I see some growth art for you.
So it's going to shock everyone and go with Scotty so he can get a free pitcher.
Nice. He'll drink the green sludge.
Yes.
I guess my alternate book was just Kirk's love interest was more age appropriate. Other than that, so I've nitpicked on some of the annoyances, but I rated this book 5 out of 5 on Goodreads. I thoroughly enjoyed rereading it again for the first time in a long time. And while we found things to complain about as we're talking, those things weren't really standing out to me so much as I read. I thought it was a very enjoyable read. I gave the graphic novel 4 out of 5 because I didn't agree with all the edits and cuts, especially the end implication that Kirk would get the B. But other than that, I really liked it. I will probably go ahead and read The Return just because I want to get back into the series and maybe read through the rest of the series that I didn't finish before.
Yeah, I like I said, I enjoyed it thoroughly. It's right in my wheelhouse. Yeah, some of the things, some of the stuff was nitpicking, which is what we do. That's our mandate. But also, I think putting it in the larger context of Trek is what we're doing as well. And in some ways, it's like, well, yeah, but as a read, yeah, it's what if they made a movie of that, I would have friggin' loved it, obviously.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And Shatner really does a good job capturing the world and voices of Trek for the most part.
Yeah.
I mean, again, we have nitpicks, but not any actor could just walk off the stage and then write a novelization. And I am sure Judith and Garfield Reeve Stevens have a lot of influence into that. But still, I got to give Shatner a lot of credit too, because I'm sure he was a creative driving force behind it. I'm sure he didn't just slap his name on it. So
Mm.
I think it really was a collaboration, not just him saying, "I got
And
an idea, write the book for me." I don't think it was
yeah,
that.
I guess he could
Interesting.
have wrote a bunch of books about young Kirk, but this is
Well, I think at this point he was still. I honestly think, and I could be wrong, but I thought this at the time because I was reading these as they were coming out. I was pretty sure he was upset that Star Trek had killed him off, and the books were his way of pitching of there's more Kirk movies to be made.
yeah, yeah.
Adapt Ashes of Eden because I'm still close enough in age. Adapt The Return where Kirk now comes back and I can still be in more movies. I really think he was trying to sell the forces that be that Kirk was still a viable character to use.
Mm.
It's I mean it's his line from Enter Wrath of Khan, yeah, as
Yeah.
Mr. Spock used to say, there are always possibilities. So
Yep.
you're never dead in improv, sci-fi,
Huh.
comic books, and something else.
I think we're all fans of Shatner in some
Yeah.
degree or another, and I'm glad he chose to write a bunch of Star Trek novels.
Yep, me too.
Mhm.
Yep.
Cool. Well, I don't know what order these special episodes will release, so you may have already heard some, you may not. No, but we're gonna do 3 special episodes, maybe 4. We'll see. At least 3 special episodes before we return for Deep Space Nine season 4, The Way of the Warrior. I'm so pumped. And Voyager season 2, starting with the 37s. Excited about that. So, until then, live long.
And keep turning those pages and prosper.
And live eternally.